Hello, bonjour, здравствуйте, assalamu alaikum, guten tag, hola, konnichiwa, ni hao. Hello and a big warm welcome to the Knitters Party podcast. My name is Megan. I'm coming to you today from my home in Cairo, Egypt, where I live with my husband for the next 7 months. We've already been here for 1 month. It's absolutely insane to think that time has passed this quickly. I hope that the rest of the trip goes by this quickly and sort of hassle-free before we end up going back to our really permanent home in San Diego, California. I am coming to you with a bunch of fun knitting, exciting news, things that I've been knitting, a couple things that were secret last time that are no longer secret, and most importantly, it was my birthday yesterday, and so I basically celebrated my birthday in Egypt for the first time ever, which was pretty cool. So I'll tell you a little bit about that, as well as show you all my good, lovely knitting. So how have you guys been doing? It was just Valentine's Day this week. Because my birthday is just 2 days after Valentine's Day, we don't normally do like a separate celebration for it, and so really we just do the one big birthday celebration. But we take birthdays really seriously here in the household. My husband's birthday was about 3 weeks ago, and we really like to celebrate for a whole weekend. Do something special, you know, out of the ordinary. Just make sure that you really have a good, fun time. Because it's not just your everyday, it's your birthday. This is like the one day that you get to celebrate you and everything that you love and make it special, make it about you. And so anyway, we're really big on birthdays. So at the end of the episode, I'll sort of give my Egypt update and talk about my birthday celebrations. But I have a couple of new things to show you guys on my knitting podcast. Ooh, I'm trying to wink, but like definitely with the wrong face. Anyway, let's get right into it. I've got a couple of finished objects today to show you, and if you, I'm always so bad at these introductions. If you want to follow me on Instagram and Ravelry, please do. My name is Meg311yo, and this is where you're going to find a lot more of my everyday Egypt updates, a little bit about my knitting as well, but that's that. If you want to follow me, go ahead. But if you do follow me, then you have seen my first finished object like numerous times, because I wore it all day yesterday on my birthday, and I just have not taken it off since I put it on. So today is the first day I'm not wearing this when I finished it a couple of days ago. So no surprise here. I finished my Owls sweater by Kate Davies. And my sweater, a little bit about it, the yarn is knit in Knit Picks City Tweed Heavy Worsted, and this is the colorway Lemon Curd. You can see the yoke here is completed. I decided to do the largest size. If you didn't catch my last episode, I was telling about the fact that basically the pattern is written for a bulky weight yarn. I ended up using a heavy worsted weight. So I had to sort of adjust my gauge, adjust the size that I was making, and I ended up making the largest size that you can, which was a size 8 on the pattern. She doesn't do like large, extra large, 2X. She just does like 1 through 8 basically. I made the largest size, the 8. But my gauge was much smaller than the pattern calls for. Long story short, it all worked out in the end. I figured that it would, and especially with blocking, you can always make it a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, whatever you want from it. So I finished my sweater. I was about this way, maybe this far last time you guys saw it, but I have been knitting on this like a fiend, and because it's knit in heavy worsted yarn, it just flew right off the needles. You can see that it already has some like pretty big pills. You should see my bed sheets. Like I was covered, I took this off yesterday and I was like covered in pills. And I had blocked this, I'd washed it. It's just gonna be one of those yarns that pills a lot. Anyway, I added a couple of eyes. I originally had planned to have red button eyes for the yoke up here, but I looked at my buttons again, I looked at the yarn, and I figured that it was just gonna be a bit too bright. So I decided to take the 2 special buttons that I knew I was always going to have for just one owl, and I decided to put them right up here. And I think it looks pretty good. You can't necessarily tell that they're owls from a distance, but when you come up close, I definitely think that it's more than obvious that they are owls. But yeah, I feel so good wearing this, and it was so much fun to knit. I mentioned last time how I didn't exactly do all of the waist and back shaping just because I thought it was quite aggressive, and I was really happy that I didn't, because after I washed it, after I blocked it, It fits pretty well, but it is a little bit tight in certain areas. And so I blocked it as big as I'm comfortable going because I don't want it to sort of stretch out the stitches so much. I really want it to look and lay flat, look nice. And so I'm really happy I did not do all of those waist and back shapings, but I think overall it is pretty fantastic. So I wore this all day yesterday when I was out on the town in Zamalek, Cairo, just having my birthday fun. We ended up like sort of going out and shopping, going out to lunch. Again, I'll give a little more birthday update later, but this ended up coming in handy because, oh, covered in hair already. For the nighttime event, we ended up having dinner at the Cairo Tower, which is, if you've ever been to Toronto, it's somewhat similar to like the CN Tower, where it's the tallest building in the city, actually the tallest building in Egypt, and they have a rotating restaurant on the top floor. And then after that, you go out to the observation deck, which is all outdoor, because at the end of the day, it's Egypt. It's not super freezing, it never snows, it doesn't rain that much. And so anyway, last night it was really cold and it rained, and I was really happy to have a heavy worsted weight sweater on my body because we had to wait in line, all sorts of this stuff. But this came in so handy and I was really happy to be wearing it. So not only was it my birthday, not only did I feel really special wearing my hand knit sweater, it fits me like a glove. It's absolutely perfect, minus one small detail. So the bottom of the sweater is where you cast on. And I just don't know of a super stretchy cast on, especially for 2x2 rib. I wanted this to sort of stretch out more than it does. Like it sort of bows in, puckers in a little bit at the end at the bottom of my sweater. And it's just a couple inches too tight around my midsection. So I'm thinking what my best options are to make this a little bit looser. I have done a sweater before where I ended up sort of ripping out my cast on edge and trying to knit down another inch or so and then, you know, bind off using a stretchier bind off. But what ended up happening is like my stitches were half a stitch off. And so when you're knitting down, if you try to pick up stitches going the other way, it can pose problems and like you're gonna be a half a stitch off. And so all my knits and purls, especially in this 2x2 rib, they were off by just a half a stitch, and it was so weird. I didn't know how to fix it. And so I just have a sweater. You can't really tell now because it's, I don't know, this is my green sweater, my never ending sweater that I knit in Egypt last time we were here in fall 2016. Check out my first episode. I've got all the information about like how I had to re-knit this thing. Anyway, I don't want to do that here. So I'm thinking that what I want to do is, this is just it's a non-superwash wool yarn, so it will felt, as noted by my armpits already. I've worn this for one day and the armpits are already completely felted. That's okay, I don't care. But what I want to do at the bottom here is basically just cut a small slit along the side on either end, like just with the ribbing. So cut maybe a 1.5 inch slit right here, and then that way it'll allow it to sort of open up a little bit. Because what's happening when I wear it now is that this is ever so slightly tighter than the rest of the sweater. And so the rest of the sweater wants to sort of be a little bit baggy, a little big, which is exactly how I want it to be. But then it sort of stops because this doesn't go any stretchier. It doesn't widen up anymore. So I think if I cut it just a little bit on two sides, it would sort of be able to flare open a little bit and allow for the extra room that I want. My only concern with that is that if it doesn't felt properly, it could unravel. And obviously I would fix it, and I've got a little bit of extra yarn. This is my leftover yarn from the sweater. So if I needed to fix anything, I definitely have enough to, you know, do some serious mending if needed. But I would prefer not to. So I'm hoping that that's a good option. I'm gonna think about it still, but I'm definitely considering this a finished object. I mean, it's woven end ends, it's washed, it's blocked. I even put the buttons on that one owl that I wanted. Otherwise, I'm not worried about it. So anyway, that is my Owls sweater by Kate Davies. This is probably my favorite sweater that I knit. And I know I said that last week when I had finished my Britannia sweater, but because this yarn is sort of big name yarn, I mean, it's Knit Picks, the color consistency between balls is perfect. I couldn't have hoped for anything better. And so you cannot tell where I've switched from one ball to the next. You cannot tell if I sort of did like one row until my old ball ran out and my new ball started. The color consistency on this is just exactly what you want in a sweater. This looks like I purchased it from a store, and that makes me excited and happy. And it also frustrates me about, you know, hand-dyed yarn, because I want to support these amazing dyers. I want to knit with their products, but they do end up striping a little bit or pooling in different places, and that's not, you know, it's not what I want. So anyway, I think this is my favorite sweater that I've knit so far. It fits like a dream. It's so fun and like personable. I mean, just look at these owls, and on the back as well. I just think it's a really wonderful project. Okay, one more funny thing. When I had just cast off the sweater, you know, this is a yoked sweater, and so basically it's the same on the front as it is on the back. The only difference is that on the back there's a lot of like waist shaping, and then there's side shaping as well. So there's lower back shaping and side shaping. So I go to try this on when it's fresh off the needles, and it's a little bit tight, as I knew it would be. Of course, you block it out after that. But I go to show my husband, and he's like, oh, it's a little tight, like in your stomach area. And I was like, oh, I know, man, like I'm so frustrated about it. And before I had blocked it, I decided to add a little contrasting color to notify that this is the back. So this is where I would have, you know, the, like the tag in the back of your cardigan or whatever, just to notify that's the back, right? So I put this in, I wash it, I block it, and I realize that the side with the little tag is the front of the sweater, not the back of the sweater. And you can tell because the back of the sweater has all sorts of shaping, increases and decreases here. So I put a tag on the wrong side of my sweater, not to mention the fact that I added buttons to only one owl, so it's pretty easy to tell which is the front, which is the back. So I'm probably going to rip this out, this little, you know, contrasting color. Why? I mean, I kind of like it. It's sort of funny because I'm human, so it's just a reminder of my like human error. Whatever. I don't want a reminder of my human error. No. But that's it. So this is my Owls sweater by Kate Davies, knit in Knit Picks, heavy worsted tweed, city tweed in the colorway Lemon Curd. I love it, and I will be wearing this to death. Now, the reason I'm knitting so many sweaters right now is that not only is it cool in Zamalek, it's cool in Cairo right now, maybe like mid-60s, but also my parents are coming to visit me in end of March, yes, the end of next month, and I'm hoping that I can sort of send them home with some of my knits. This is all the yarn that I have left to knit with. I had 6 balls of this yarn, obviously gone into my sweater, so that's done. I had 3 skeins of my Sweet Georgia Tough Love sock that I knit for my Britannia sweater. And so I'm basically slowly working through my stash that I brought to Egypt. And we've got my parents coming, we've got my husband's family coming, and so I want to sort of send some things home with them so that I'm not left with a huge suitcase full of fully knit garments and no room for souvenirs or for extra yarn or whatnot. So that's that. So I'm knitting all the sweaters now so I can get rid of sort of my quantities of yarn, and then I'll be left with some like really beautiful single skeins that I can do for a single project. It doesn't take up too much room, neither as a skein nor as a finished product, and so that's that. So cool, that's my first finished object. Moving on to my next finished object. If you watched last episode, I said that I was doing some secret knitting and that I didn't tell you guys exactly what it was. Well, I finished it, and it's going to get frogged. It's going to get frogged. I was trying to sort of redesign my Veni Vidi Vici shawl that I was working on back when I was still in Michigan. And basically it's a V-shaped shawl. I'll just show you this one. So it's a V-shaped shawl. It's not a triangle shawl. I really wanted it to sort of get rid of all the bulk of a triangle shawl while still adding the length and the drape of a triangle shawl. So I was gonna make a V-shaped shawl. And I had worked on a design in Michigan, and it was great. I think it worked out pretty well, but it was sort of a really unique construction. So I decided to rework it while I was here, and I came up with this, and it's just the wrong proportion. And so this is my own design. I will be redesigning this. I think I'll end up going back to the original design elements that were in the first shawl that I was knitting in Michigan. But this is sort of my redesigned Veni Vidi Vici shawl. And this one is super unique too because it's basically a bottom-up shawl as opposed to a top-down, which pretty much every shawl I've ever made, at least every triangle or V-shaped shawl that I've made has been that style. So it is sort of pretty. It has these little picot edges that you make along the way. I really like the stitch pattern that's in here. It's super easy to follow. There is very little purling involved, and so it's really fast, it's nice, it's beautiful. I love this yarn, but the proportion is off. And so this is obviously the center of the shawl. This part is too long considering how short the actual like wings are. And so when you put it on, mind you, this has not been washed, it has not been blocked. I haven't woven in my ends because I'm literally gonna just rip this thing out as soon as I'm done broadcasting and repurpose the yarn. But I think it's a good idea, but it's too long, you know, like they're basically equal length. The length of the depth of the shawl and the length of the wings are almost the same thing, which is exactly like a triangle shawl. It's not what I was going for at all. I was really hoping that I would get like twice the length in the wingspan to one length of shawl. That's not happening. And so it was happening in my old shawl design, but this one is not. So this is knit in Knit Picks Galileo, which is 50% merino wool, 50% bamboo. And this is the colorway Valentine. I bought 4 balls. I brought 4 balls with me to Egypt. I used 2 for this project and I have 2 left. So I'm going to just rip these out and reuse them into a different shawl. The shawl that I want to design is a fingering weight, but I don't really have access to a lot of like fingering weight yarn right now with me. I have mostly like DK, worsted. This is fingering, but this has a very special project in mind. So I'm not using my Madeline Tosh for my own hand design. So anyway, I don't have a lot of fingering yarn to sort of play around with, and I've been having a hard time finding yarn in Egypt. So I'm knitting it right now out of the only sort of extra quantity of yarn that I brought with me, this sport weight yarn from Knit Picks. I love it. It's a beautiful yarn. It's nice to work with. I hope that when I rip it out that it maintains its integrity and so that it doesn't sort of completely fall apart or start fuzzing up. I want to remake this shawl using all 4 balls. Maybe it might only take 2 or 3, but I need to repurpose this yarn. So I'm really frustrated. I think it's a nice design. Again, I love the stitch. I love the idea of a V-shaped shawl, not a triangle shawl. I want something without all this bulk up here. I live in a warm weather place, whether it's in California, whether it's in Egypt, like I won't need a huge heavy, you know, 400 gram fingering weight shawl. Like I'm really looking for something lightweight, but still decorative and pretty and fun and easy to knit. And I haven't found that yet. It's proving harder to create than I expected. And so maybe there's a reason that these V-shaped shawls don't exist. And maybe I'm just figuring out what designers have known for ages. I don't know. I'm just doing my best here. So I'll just go back to my original design from a couple episodes ago. And yeah, this will be reknit, literally fuzz from my last sweater. But that's my secret knitting, secret no more, and say goodbye because it's going forever. You know how Ravelry has the new thing where you can set a goal for yourself of how many projects you want to knit in 2018? So I put this one on there as a completed object, of course, for 2018. And my goal is, I think, 35 projects for the year. I wonder if I say that I frog it, does it count towards my total or not? I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that and see if it still counts as a finished object, because it's done. It's off the needles, you know, but I'm gonna frog it. And so is it gonna count towards my finished objects? What do you guys think? Like, should it count? I think it should count because I still finished it. Who cares if I rip it out? I could reknit with the same yarn over and over again, but if I finish something in the first place, I think it's fine. So I'll have to think about that. I'll get back to you guys on that. So that's all for my finished objects. My next section is going to be my works in progress, and I have a couple of interesting things. So we'll just get right going with this. So I'll start off with one thing that you did see last week, living in my Michael's Canada bag, my 150th anniversary Canada bag that I picked up for $1.50 Canadian when I was in Edmonton last. I have living my Stonecroft shawl by Judy Marples. And this thing is getting really big. This one is for my mother. She had asked me to knit her a big, giant, beautiful shawl, and we chose this pattern together. I am going to be making one for myself. I am so enjoying knitting on this, and I've definitely memorized the pattern. Like I mentioned last time, the reason that this is such a nice knit is like, look at this yarn. It is so tightly spun. You can see everything. The stitch definition is fabulous. It does have silk in there, and so it has a nice shine to it, a nice drape. But look at this lace design on the side here. It's an asymmetrical triangle shawl, and it has this nice lace panel as well as this sort of mesh, but it's more than a mesh. It's a really unique, like almost a star design mesh. And I think once I block this out and stretch it, it's going to be absolutely incredible. There's also a super unique element where it has sort of this I-cord edge that you knit as you go. And it's so easy. I want to copy it for everything, but obviously I'm not going to because, you know, this designer worked really hard to make this shawl and every detail is perfect. And so, for example, when I was knitting the Owls sweater by Kate Davies, the pattern, I did not like how it was written. I did not like how aggressively shaped it was with the back seaming and the side seam or the side shaping. I just didn't love how it was written. I didn't like the design elements. I just wanted to get to the owls and be done with it. It wasn't what I expected it to be. Whereas this pattern is so well written, it should be a like mandatory thing for designers to look at how other patterns are written and sort of emulate things that you think are really good. The directions are very clear. There's no waffling about stitch counts and numbers or shaping or whatever. It's just a very easy charted pattern. I can't say enough good things about this. And so this is pretty big so far, and this has not been blocked, obviously, hasn't been washed or anything. I am on my fourth ball. This is Knit Picks Paragon in the colorway Kenai. I'm on my fourth ball and I have 5 total. I think that that's going to be the perfect length. So you wear it around your neck. This is sort of what goes around your neck, and then you know, wrap it around. I think it's going to be the perfect length, the perfect depth. She said she wanted a huge, big, oversized shawl, and this one's going to be lightweight. It's going to be super decorative and beautiful. It's got silk in it, and so it's going to just be strong and shiny and drapey. Don't you dare put this in the wash, Mom. I swear to God, if she does, I'm gonna kill her, because I am working really hard on this. I'm enjoying every minute of it, but I'm working really hard on this. Where that little stitch marker is where I was last time. I've knit at least a ball and that much. So you can see where I've added some extra yarn here. So I've added a ball and that much. I've got 1.5 balls left, and I hope to just use it all up. I think it's going to be the perfect size. There's basically, it's so easy to know when you need to stop. Like as soon as you're running out of yarn, more or less, or as soon as you have probably a half a skein left, that's when you do this lace panel goes up the side and along the final edge. And so it's going to be all across the top here is going to have the same lace panel. And I think it's going to be really easy to tell when you've got enough yarn. So that's that. It's perfect. This is an amazing pattern, and I'm so excited to gift this to my mother. I think everyone I know is gonna want one. I don't know how many times I can knit the same pattern. I've knit triplicates of just one pattern, only ever, and that was the Celtic Cable Neck Warmer by Lindsay Hendricks. I've knit 3 of those, but that's a tiny project. It takes 1 day, maybe a day and a half to finish. So I don't think I'm gonna do numerous ones of these, but definitely one for me, one for my mom, of course, and then we'll take it from there. So this is my first work in progress. Very happy with it. I love this yarn. It's a sport weight yarn. I'm thinking about knitting with this for another project that I have in mind. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't take down her name. One very, very sweet podcast viewer, and I will have to put her name in here. She ended up gifting me the only pattern I had on my wish list, which I've been ogling over forever and ever, and it is the Evelyn. There we go. It's the Evelyn coat by Vanessa Smith. It is absolutely stunning. I've been ogling over this for years since I've been looking at it, but it's got lots of like cables. It's literally like 1/1 cables. The whole thing has like this lattice, beautiful lattice cable work. But it takes a ton of yarn. I need something like 2,700 yards of sport weight yarn for this project. And now that I've been working with Paragon, I want to use this, but I would need like, I think I did the math, I think I need 26 balls of yarn. It's either 24 or like 26 balls of yarn in 50-gram balls from Knit Picks in order to finish this. It's gonna cost like $190 to knit it out of Paragon. Or I could do something cheaper like a Wool of the Andes Sport or something much cheaper that would cost maybe less than $100. So I want to knit with this because it's so amazing, but I don't know if it would work well for a jacket. It's so drapey. It does have silk, you know, I don't know. I've got to think about it, but I definitely am going to be making that pattern because I now have the pattern. So thank you. I will definitely put your name. I'm so sorry I don't have it on the air while I'm talking about it, but thank you so much for the pattern. I will have to knit it now. So you've inspired me to knit this pattern and to just invest in it because it is investment worthy. Guys, I'm literally an English teacher in Egypt right now. Again, more on that later, but you ever feel like you don't know your own language that well? Invest worthy? Come on, investment worthy. I'm just gonna be done talking about this topic because I don't want to embarrass myself. Here's my awesome shawl, that's it. All right, my next couple of works in progress. I literally say this every time that I'm not a sock knitter, but I have like serious sock talk today. So I have definitely been knitting on these socks. Oh, I forgot that I had put the actual ball of yarn inside the cuff of the sock to keep it safe and tidy. So that's pretty cool. So, hey, these are my Hermione's Everyday Socks. I've actually knit like almost 2 inches on these socks since I saw you last. And I found my knitting mojo. Last time I had asked you guys sort of how you knit your socks. Are you 2 at a time, 9-inch circulars? And I had an interesting comment that I really liked. And one person said she knits her socks concurrently on separate needles. And so she'll knit, you know, the cuff of one sock and then she'll start the cuff of the next. She'll knit the body of one sock, she'll knit the body of the next. And these are on separate needles so they don't like get in each other's way, right? And I thought that was a really smart idea. I own 2 sets of sock needles, but they're not the same brand. So these ones that I'm using for these socks are Knit Picks nickel plated brass. This is not interchangeable. You know, like sock needles can't really be because they're so narrow. But I have just 1 pair of these, and my other pair of sock needles are an Addi Turbo. I'll show you guys in the next one. But I don't have 2 of the same sock needle, so I wouldn't be able to do concurrent, but I will definitely be ordering another pair of these sock needles. They are preferred to my freaking Addi needles. I'm telling you, I love my Knit Picks needles. They are, I think, $60 for the interchangeable set, and I have knit with them exclusively for like 2 years, I think, and I cannot get enough of them. They're fast. The join is really smooth. If the cable gets a little wonky, you just dip it in hot water and it relaxes immediately. I really find these needles perfect. But anyway, so I've been knitting my Hermione's Everyday Sock. This yarn is Malabrigo sock yarn in the colorway Wales Road. And it's beautiful. It's 100% superwash merino, so there's no nylon, no big deal. But I am literally like 1 inch away from starting the toes. And so maybe next time I'll even have completed socks. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I've been actually having fun knitting on these. What I've been doing is basically like knitting across one sock, and then I would like sort of draw out my magic loop, put the sock on that magic loop, and then sort of do this one. It almost feels like double pointed needles because I basically have like 3 sections of, I have 3 loops on my magic loop. So I've got like the loop on the left, I got the loop that I'm using with my working needle, and then I have the loop that's sort of holding my other sock on it. And so that's been working better, because I found that when I'm knitting with like my 2 at a time socks, I just don't like it when I'm finished with this sock and then it's scrunched up against my needles and I have to knit on the next one and there's not enough like flexibility. It's just not, I think this is not my preferred way to knit a sock. And so that's that. I think I will get these done soon because I am dying to get these needles so that I can make another sock, so that I can do something new and not have these socks have been haunting me for like 2 months now. Yeah, since December, no, so since December 8th, I've been knitting on these socks since December. And so this is like the 3rd month that I've been knitting it. So December, January, February, yeah. So I've been knitting these socks for way too long. I just want to get them off my needles so that they don't haunt me anymore. And I want to make myself a pair of socks because these socks are for a friend. I want to have enough left over to make myself a pair of shorty socks. And I love this yarn so much that I'm not going to do contrasting. I might do like a contrast heel just to save a little bit of yarn, but I want to have like toes and cuffs in this color as much as I can. So I'll have to find a toe up sock pattern, just knit the rest of this yarn because I do not want any of this left over. This was expensive yarn and it's absolutely beautiful. Expensive, but worth it. So let me pop this back into my cuff here. Yay, safekeeping. Little tips and tricks of the trade. So that is my first pair of socks. My next work in progress is another sock. I can't believe this. I have 3 socks on the needles right now and I'm like loving every minute of it. And this is my next sock. I've got a lot to say about this. So this is the front of it. These are the Cobble socks by Ruth Brash. And she is the designer and dyer behind Everyday Yarnworks, but she also has a really awesome podcast that I've fallen in love with called Coffee, Yarn, and Dinosaurs. And so the Coffee, Yarn, and Dinosaurs podcast is where I found out about her, but she has a lot of awesome patterns available on Ravelry. And I actually test knit another pair of her socks a couple of months ago, maybe in October. Gosh, that was a long time ago. I test knit her Almost Erin sock pattern, which was awesome. They're beautiful socks. Unfortunately, we did not bring them to Egypt because I was worried that they'd get dirty or who knows. Oh, I'm literally wearing hand knit socks right now, by the way, too. So she designed these Cobble socks pattern specifically for variegated yarn so that, and this is like, I'm totally paraphrasing her, but basically she said that you get every little color change gets a turn because of the way that the pattern is written. You sort of get to wrap your yarn. And I really like the idea of it. My problem is, this is the yarn that I'm using. It is Ancient Arts yarn, 100% BFL, in the colorway Alpine Meadows. It is like a green and purple. My problem is that I think the yarn is fugly. And so I don't think it looks great on these. I specifically chose this pattern because I was like, oh my God, it's specifically designed for variegated yarn. I have no other use for this yarn. I don't even know how I was going to use it in the first place. I made a penguin out of it, but I don't love this yarn. I think it's sort of ugly. And so I was like, oh my God, this pattern is going to save this yarn because, you know, it needs it. And I still think it's sort of ugly. And so it's not anything to do with the pattern that I'm using. Ruth, I think this pattern is fantastic. It's well written. I do like the idea of giving every color change sort of its own chance, which is really nice, but I still think it's sort of ugly. I actually like the plain stitches better, the stockinette stitch that's on the bottom of the foot. I think it's nicer and the colors play well together when it's just knit in stockinette. The problem I'm having is that my gauge is super loose for some reason, and I think it has to do with the yarn. So in the pattern, there's sizes for like the different width of the yarn, and I was thinking that, sorry, I realized that the camera is like a little tilted. Much better. Hope that wasn't too noticeable. Anyway, in the pattern, it's written for like how wide your foot is basically, and I have a wide foot. I wear a size 10 wide in women's. And so I was gonna knit the large, extra large size. So I cast on for the right number of stitches. I start knitting and I'm like maybe up to here, and I try it on and it's gaping. It's gaping. This is a huge, huge sock and there's no way that it's going to fit me. So I rip it all back and I cast on for the medium size. Do the same, I knit only a little bit, it's still too big. So I ended up making the women's small size, which I think is only 60 stitches, and I have a wide foot, but my stitches are not tight at all. I think it's the BFL, because I don't understand how I'm normally true to gauge. I'm not a tight knitter, but I'm not a loose knitter. I'm knitting these on size 1.5 or 2.5 millimeter needles, I believe. And these are my Addies, by the way. I got these forever ago when I first got the very first yarn shop I ever went to. I was like, help me, I need needles. And she recommended these. But my gauge is really loose, and I've knit with these needles before and I got a fine gauge. I'm knitting my other socks in 100% merino and it's a fine gauge, but for some reason this is really loose. I don't know what it is. I think I'm gonna have to rip these out though, because like the yarn is just not working out for this pattern. It looks really beautiful right now, but don't be fooled. This is an impossible yarn to use. The green and purple mix is very strange. That's the reason I got it. I got it because I wanted to make a green and purple penguin named Lovecraft after H.P. Lovecraft, the fantasy and horror writer of the early 20th century. It was perfect for that. It's sort of this eerie colorway, greens and purples. It's very Halloween, very like witchy. I love it, but it doesn't look good in much. And so I think I'm just going to have to knit vanilla socks because it doesn't look great in this pattern. Even though I'm so far down the foot, I was gonna start the heel in like no time at all. And I'm enjoying knitting it one at a time. And so I was really like, yes, okay, I'm doing this. I can knit socks. It goes by so much faster when you're knitting it one at a time. Oh my God. But I cannot get with the yarn. So I'm sad about it. I'm gonna have to rip it out. I hope it doesn't get all fuzzy. BFL, man, this is my first time working with it. And it's not my favorite. It's a little scratchy. It's rustic. That's how the knitting community likes to say. It's not scratchy, it's a little rustic. It's a little woolen, and compared to a merino wool. My only problem is that I literally have another skein of the exact same base, this 100% Superwash BFL, and I was gonna make this into a pair of socks, and now I'm looking at this colorway and I'm like, God, all those browns with pink, like, I don't know if that's gonna be super pretty, so I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I'm so freaking out. Like, this is why I don't buy variegated yarn, because I sit here and I overthink it and I start a project and it's fugly and I don't know what to do. And so I'm just gonna repurpose, I'm not gonna repurpose this, I'm gonna rip it out. I'm gonna rip it out and I'm gonna knit vanilla socks. And I'm mad about it, but at least I can just do toe up. And then I'll sort of leave them on the needles a little bit and then knit them both at the same time when it comes to the end of my skein. But we'll see. We'll have to see how it works out, because I'm just sort of peeved about this. And I knit this in like 2 days. I've knit the whole body of this sock in 2 days. And it's been sitting for about 3 days, just waiting for me to rip it out. But I wanted to show you guys first. I still like the cobble pattern. It's not for this yarn, it's not for this sock. So, alas, I'll have to do something with it. Oh boy, I'm just a little gutted. That's it. Okay, so that's it for what's on my needles, works in progress, and finished objects. I have been doing a little birthday shopping, and in Zamalek, in my little neighborhood where I live in Cairo, I have passed by 2 little shops that sell yarn. They've got yarn right in the window, and I'm like, okay, I can buy yarn, that's good, but what kind of yarn is it? So I stopped into the first shop and picked up a couple of little things. Now this little shop, they sell sewing notions, buttons, they sell crochet hooks and knitting needles, they sell a little bit of yarn, very, very limited selection of yarn. They're mostly trims and fabrics, but it's like a small craft store. But when I say a small craft store, I mean it's the size of your living room or smaller, and they have maybe like 40 balls of yarn total in different weights, colors, etc. They have, you know, a whole wall of buttons, fine. So I decided to purchase a couple skeins of yarn, and all they sold is acrylic. But mind you, this yarn shop is tiny, and so these employees are like watching me touch the yarn. I'm sort of looking at it, I'm testing the weight of it, because there's not a lot of information on the ball band. I'll show you this. But I was just like, I wanted to buy yarn, and so I did, and I ended up picking up 2 skeins of yarn. This is not the brand. S&G is not the brand, so I don't know what the brand is. It is made in Turkey. This ball band came off. It was off when I bought it at the shop, but like, what am I gonna do? You know, this was dirt cheap. So it is 100% acrylic, 100 grams, approximately 300 meters. And this is the ball band of the importer here in Egypt. And so this has no information about the yarn itself. All I know is that it's acrylic. It seems to be like a light worsted. It's a light worsted weight yarn. It is definitely more than DK, but it's a little bit thick and thin in places. You can even see here. It's a little thick and thin. And this one seems to be a bit more consistent as like a true worsted, but it's just 100% acrylic yarn. I figure I can make baby things out of this, but I was just so interested in buying yarn in Egypt and having like, oh, this is Egyptian yarn. And then I get it home and it's made in Turkey and it's 100% acrylic. I should have known better, but it was dirt cheap. I think I paid 40 Egyptian pounds for this total, which is like $3. Like, yeah, it's like a little less than $3. They were 20 pounds each. So 20 pounds is $1.15. So I paid like $2.50 for 2 skeins of acrylic yarn. That's a steal in my eyes. So I'll have to figure out what to do with it. But yesterday on my birthday, I went to the other shop that I know sells yarn. But literally the shop that I bought that acrylic yarn at has yarn in the window. I know they sell a bunch of yarn. This other shop has like 2 skeins in the window and I've only ever passed by it. So I finally go into the shop and talk to the owner, and I see that there's a cabinet like filled with yarn, and it's more yarn, it's better yarn. And so I open the cabinet and I'm talking to the proprietor, and I'm like, oh yeah, is this like wool or is this, you know, acrylic? And he looks at, he's like, oh, on the top shelf is wool. So I pull a ball down and it's balled like this. It's not in a hank or a skein, it's like a ball of yarn like this. And I was like, oh, this is wool? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, is it acrylic? And he's like, well, yeah, it's like 75% acrylic, but there's 25% wool. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. And I said, do you have any Egyptian cotton? And he points me down to the shelf just below the wool. And there they are, like these skeins of Egyptian cotton yarn. I ended up picking up 2 skeins of real Egyptian cotton yarn. These were the only good colors, let me tell you. They had a lot of baby colors, like only pastels. They had exclusively pastels and black and white yarn. And you know me, I'm not a fan of, like, look at my wall right now. I'm like jewel tones only, maybe some speckles if you got them, some sparkle all day. But I am not one to buy, you know, a skein of baby pink yarn. So I'm looking around and I decided to purchase these 2 skeins. I'm actually really happy with this because this ball band has a little bit more information. It is all in Arabic. In fact, you know what? I take that right back. It does not tell me anything about it. I know that it's Egyptian because like this is like the Egyptian company for like yarns or whatever. But it doesn't have a lot of information on the band. I'm wondering if it's covered up by here, but you can feel it. It's 100% cotton. There's no doubt about it. This has no acrylic in it. It's really shiny. It's a little heavy. You know when you knit with cotton and it sort of hurts your hands a little bit? I can tell this is going to do that until I use fabric softener on my finished product. But I figured that this is pretty good. So these are 100 grams of yarn. There's no information on the yardage or how many meters are in it, but I figure I can get a nice lightweight, high contrast colorwork shawl. So that's what I'm thinking about it. I've been thinking about doing a couple of high contrast color work shawls. Say that 5 times fast. It's not as easy as you think to do these things. But I just liked it. And so at least I know now that I can maybe pick up a couple skeins of these for souvenirs. I've got some knitting friends in San Diego who, God, 2 years ago when we left for our abroad adventure, they said, you know, oh, like jokingly, oh, bring us back some Egyptian cotton yarn. So I might bring them back, you know, 1 skein or maybe like a high contrast color thing like this of some Egyptian cotton yarn. These skeins were 40 pounds each, so 80 pounds total. The US dollar is 17.8 Egyptian pounds. And so it's almost 20 pounds to the dollar. So these are like $2.50 for a 100-gram skein of mercerized Egyptian cotton. Now, I've worked with a lot of cotton yarns. My favorite is like the Cascade Ultra Pima. And those are like 10 bucks a skein. So for $2.50, literally 1/4 the price, I can get real Egyptian quality yarn. So I'm really happy with that. I hate the color selection, but it's cotton. You can't expect the vibrancy that comes with acid dyed wool yarn. So black and white it is. I'm not mad about it. I literally am wearing like nothing but black and white today. So maybe I can find something that can go with this outfit. Actually, that's a great idea. Cool. So that's all my acquisitions. I just want to talk a little bit about my birthday and also about my Egypt vlog. I'll start with that because I had put out an Egypt vlog the same day that I posted my last podcast. And here in Egypt, people are very proud to be Egyptian. You know, they've got the history. Egyptians are really proud and they're very patriotic people. And so when my Egypt vlog was posted, I guess I didn't think that it would attract attention from like real Egyptian people. I figured it would just be my podcast viewers who would go watch it. But I had a ton of real Egyptian people, you know, welcoming me to the country and you know, saying that they loved my my vlog and like wishing me well in Egypt. It's just sort of more than I expected, which is really great. And so I think, unfortunately, I'm going to not do a separate Egypt vlog series just because I've lived in Egypt twice before. I know how this works. I'm still in that excited phase. You know, I just started a job. I just moved here, you know, but as soon as that culture shock really starts to set in, that's where you get the tendrils of depression and not everything is rosy pink. And I would not want to say something that's really offensive to any Egyptian people. I love this country. Like, I've been here. This is my 3rd time living here. I love it. But I also know that I get culture shock. I know that I miss my family and friends. I get homesick. I know that it's not going to be all, you know, rainbows and sunshine forever. And so I don't want to say anything that could be hurtful or that Egyptians could mistake and think that I don't appreciate their country in any way. So I think I'm not going to do the separate Egypt vlog anymore. It just attracted some unwanted attention for me. So I'd rather do it like a little small Egypt update at the end of my podcast. If that doesn't interest you, that's totally fine. You can say goodbye now. I've showed you all my yarn. But if you want to stick around, you know, I just want to talk a little bit more about it. But just know I probably will not be doing more Egypt vlogs. Or if I do, it might be something super touristy, you know, like when my parents come and we visit the pyramids, that I can do a whole separate thing on. But if I want to talk about my real life experiences, I'll just do it at the end of these podcasts because anyone who's watched to the end is probably a knitter. And they're probably, you know, someone who's gotten to know me a little bit over these podcasts. So that's my thought process on my Egypt vlog. Now, moving on to my Egypt update. Last week I did end up getting a job, securing a job, get training for the job, and I have actually been teaching English classes here for 1 week. I am teaching English conversation classes at a nonprofit school in Doki, which is in Giza. This is the school that I had been working with for several months, and I had to keep postponing them when I was being postponed our travel date for Egypt. And so I was really worried they wouldn't even want to see me, that they wouldn't want to hire me. But I went into the school on a whim and they were so happy. They're like, oh my God, you have perfect timing. Like, training starts today. Do you want this job? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. And so they gave me like a quick 3-day teacher like boot camp. And it was a really good refresher from my CELTA course that I had completed in London back in April last year. And so I've been a little bit rusty with my skills. This was a really great way to get back into the game. So I am teaching 2 classes of the same level of English, and it is really fun so far. The organization I'm working with is an NGO, a non-governmental organization, and they're actually recognized by the United Nations like Department of Education. It's a really wonderful school to work for. They work with real Egyptian people, and so they're charging Egyptian prices, which means I get paid Egyptian prices. It's a lot less than I expected, but I'm lucky that my husband is getting, you know, we're basically funded to be here in Egypt, and so anything that I bring in is just on top of that. It's a little bit extra. And so that's that. I'm not making a ton of money, but it's really fun and it's great work experience. And I'm hoping that when I go back to San Diego that I'll be able to take this experience and get a job, you know, teaching English or maybe doing half teaching, half administration at an English school when I go back there. That was my career for the last 5 years when I was in San Diego, Santa Barbara, and Boston. Those are sort of the places we've lived. That's been my career, is working in English schools, but this is the first time I'm in the classroom working with real students, and it makes a whole difference. I feel better, I feel more fulfilled. But again, I've been teaching for exactly 1 week. Like, let me talk to you guys in 6 months when I'm done teaching, you know, we'll see if this is something I want to continue. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So that's my most exciting update for Egypt, is that I got a job and I'm doing something and I'm lesson planning and I'm traveling to and from work and I'm working with students, and it's cool. If you made it this far, thank you for joining me. Please do give me a thumbs up if you liked this video, as well as with all your favorite YouTube content. Again, if you give us a thumbs up, a comment, like and subscribe, it really helps other people to find our podcast as well. So not just for me, for all your favorite YouTube content, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe. It really helps us to sort of get the word out there so that other people can find our podcast. So that's it for me. Ma'a salama. My name is Megan, Meg311yo on Ravelry and Instagram, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.